I've been on a journey traveling the world, exploring new food, new cultures, and people, listening to their stories along the way and experiencing my own. Welcome to The Journey. And this is The Journey Podcast. It's episode 27. The Journey Podcast, where I'm sharing stories with you. It could be my story, it could be somebody else's story, but it's just sharing stories with the world. That's what we're all about, sharing stories with the world. And to start this episode off, I just want to share a quote of the day. The quote of the day is, "Don't let the fear of striking out stop you from playing the game." That is from the great Bambino, Babe Ruth, American baseball player, played for the Atlanta Braves, and more notably, I think, the New York Yankees. And here's a fact. I didn't even know this. I always thought he was a shorter guy, but I guess he's actually like 6'2". So him and I would have been pretty much the same height. I didn't realize that. Great quote. Not letting the fear of striking out stop you from playing the game. I think that applies to just about anything. Fear is false evidence appearing real. And a lot of times we have fear of something that's going to stop us from accomplishing a goal, from starting a project, from leading a project, taking on something new, because we want to be comfortable, because we want to be perfect. We're not going to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. We never will be. Our project, our product, our business, whatever it is, it'll never be perfect. And we just have to get that through our head. We are not going to be perfect. We can strive for perfection and we'll get excellence. Now, we can't allow that to paralyze us. I want to share a story today of how this kind of applies. And for a long time, I think I might have mentioned this in the past, but back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I did internet radio long before YouTube and all this was around. And, you know, you can't imagine, I couldn't have imagined back then how it would be today. The fact that I could drive in my truck and go live and share with thousands or millions or potentially, billions of people around the world. That was not anything that you could even imagine back then. Back then, it's still like cell phones were, still pretty crude. I mean, you made phone calls. I mean, shoot, in the late 90s, there's probably still people that had beepers. And if you don't know what a beeper is, exactly, that's how long ago, or that's how old, that's how new cell phones were back then. But I couldn't even imagine the potential of today. That you could get on a computer, you could record something, you could go live something, you could share that with potentially billions of people around the world. I mean, we used to have pen pals. You'd have to write a letter and send it in the mail. Yeah, I know. I'm starting kind of old. But that just means that we have to capitalize on the thing that we have. We have to, I don't want to say take advantage, but I mean, hey, you got all of these tools, things that are really cheap that cost thousands, if not hundreds or thousands of dollars, millions of dollars to be able to do this back 20, 30 years ago. There was gatekeepers, people that stopped you from doing it. Now the potential, it's limitless. You can really do anything. With a creative mind, a phone, a computer, you don't need all of the stuff. And I find it funny because people talk about podcasting and they want to share what it means to start a podcast and what you have to do to start a podcast and tweaking this and tweaking that. And it's like, no, you're stuck in that past mindset of what it used to be. You're taking on what other people have taught you or what you see, and you're not allowing yourself to break that mold and say, you know what, I'm going to do it this way. This is going to be the new way. That's what happens when there's an innovator and they say, you know what, I'm going to start new. I'm not going to follow those people that have done it the same way all the time. I'm going to break from that. I'm going to start something new. It doesn't need to be perfect. You don't have to, I'm going to say it this way. You have to do an intro that way. No, that's not true. And that's, you have to be an innovator. You have to try something new. Maybe it won't start off well in the beginning, but guess what? Eventually people are going to catch on, because if you're thinking of doing it that way, I'm sure there's plenty of other people that are thinking of doing it the same way. They might be just too afraid to jump, too fearful to start it and do that, because they're thinking that people are going to be, oh, look, they're wrong. But they're not wrong. Just hasn't been done that way. You're going to be a trailblazer. You're going to be one of those first people to do it. And you just do it. And eventually they'll catch up and they'll figure it out. And that was a big problem of mine. Like, I did the internet radio thing. It just didn't take off. People just, they weren't ready for it. You couldn't listen to an internet radio station in your car like you can today, like you're streaming. Once again, it was unimaginable of even doing it back in the late 90s, early 2000s. People were, they were amazed when you had an internet radio station and you could have somebody in China listen to you. They're like, what? You're doing what? Exactly. So when I wanted to start the podcast, I was kind of stuck in that old mindset. And there was a lot of things that were holding me back, like perfection and fear. And like, I don't know, am I going to do it the right way? And then it's morphed over some time, just starting it. And as I hold this Gulfstream G650 coffee cup mug, the podcast is called The Journey. And that's because I'm going to tell my stories along the way of over the past 25, 30 years, places I've been, people I've met, and also bringing guests on to tell their story. And I mean, this is just one small page in the book of life, in the book of stories that I have. I got that mug in my past position working as a senior avionics technician, a tester, somebody that's testing out the G650 or the G6, as you probably heard in plenty of rap songs, country songs, like a G6. Tested out G650 aircraft. It's a $65 million business jet, luxury jet. The highest flying jets, flying at 51,000 feet, 0.925 Mach. Just, that's a small page. That's a small story in all of the stories. And I'm sure you have a story yourself. You got plenty of stories to share with people that people can relate to. Plenty of them. And you can be able to take those stories, share them with other people, and there's experiences and things that you've learned through them that will help other people. And one of the stories that I want to share today is just me starting the podcast, me looking for a guest and thinking, okay, how do I start this? And just not listening to the other people. And it's not even the naysayers, but it's the people that think like they know, and hey, this is the way it's going to go, and this is how you're going to do it. It's like, no. There's plenty of other those stories and experiences that I have when people have said, hey, this is the way it's going to happen. And I'm like, no, actually, I don't think it's going to happen that way. So it was right around COVID. And I was thinking, you know what, I need to really get this podcast going. I really need to start it. I need to find a guest. And I was like, who would be a first guest? Well, I'm in the Savannah, Georgia area. So I'm like, it's got to be somebody in the Savannah, Georgia area that's big, that would be interesting to talk to learn from. And I mean, that's part of my problem too, is thinking like, hey, you got to go big. I really didn't have to. You can start small. You can talk with anybody, because like I said, anybody has a story. You don't have to be rich and famous to have a story to influence people, to inspire people. You don't even have to be old or, as I would say, experienced to inspire people to share information. You can inspire people at any age. But I thought, okay, who would be a great person? Who would be a great showman? Okay, Jesse Cole from the Savannah Bananas. If you don't know the Savannah Bananas, you got to check them out. It was a coastal league. They came in, they took over the Savannah Sand Gnats. They changed the name. They've changed a whole lot of stuff to make baseball, faster, more enjoyable, more watchable for a younger group. You got a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, you go to a baseball game, it's slow. It's too slow. There's just too much technical stuff going on, and they've changed it. But back to the story is I was like, hey, Jesse Cole, the owner that started it, I want him as a guest. I'm having breakfast at work one day, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get him. And I was like, I could probably just go through LinkedIn. Go into LinkedIn, I could find him. I could send him a message. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm having breakfast. Like, I'm going to send him a message. And then I was like, nah. I was like, man, I got to think about it. I got to write up a good story. I got to make sure it's just right. And then where I was, it was actually in a cafeteria, and they had those dividers during COVID. Kind of like these corrugated plastic dividers. So wherever you sat, there was nobody that was, right next to you. It kind of divided you. I was like, yeah, I'm going to wait. So I set my phone down. I go right back to eat my breakfast. And I kid you not, the moment I set my phone down and I go to eat breakfast, the divider in front of me, it just falls down like a wall. And to me, maybe I'm just crazy, but I was like, that's a sign right there. That's a sign that I need to pick the phone back up and I need to send a message. That's like a sign of, hey, it's breaking the wall down for me. It's saying, hey, you need to message him now. Because guess what? If you don't message him right now, you're going to say, I'll do it when I get off of work. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it Friday when I'm off of work, when I can write a better story, when I can think of something better to say. And I was like, no, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to do it right now. And it will guarantee that I get it done. It'll be guaranteed that I send the message off. So it's exactly what I did. I actually, as a matter of fact, I went onto LinkedIn, typed up a message, and I was just basically like, hey, I'm starting this podcast. I'm looking for a first guest. This is what I'm doing it about. I'd love to have you as a guest. And then I added some smarter, funny comment about zip ties, I think it was, because in his book that I read, his first book, it was Find Your Yellow Tux. It was talking about how he was not a fan of zip ties. And I had thrown something in there about putting a sign up and using zip ties, and I promised I'm not going to make you use zip ties. So I sent the message. I was like, all right, done. Right there. I jumped. No more perfection. No more fear of failure. I jumped, sent the message, set the phone back down, went back to my breakfast, finished my breakfast. I walked back to my desk, and it was within 30 minutes. Picked up my phone, I looked at it, I was like, oh, what's this? There's a notification. I looked at it. It was a message. And it was a message from Jesse Cole. He was like, I'm all in. Let's do it. I'm like, what the hell? Did that just happen? I mean, I was ecstatic. I was like, how did that just happen? I messaged my wife. I might have even called her and been like, you won't believe what just happened. I just got Jesse Cole as a guest. It was like a Friday. And I gave him like two options. Like, hey, these Fridays at, like 2 p.m., I want to come to the stadium because I was like, I'm in the area. I don't want to do a Zoom call. I don't want to do it over the computer. I want to be like right there sitting with you. I want to do it in the stadium. And he agreed. I asked, and he delivered. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen for every single person, but what I can say about Jesse is that he's fans first. That's that's their tagline. That's their slogan of the Savannah Bananas is fans first. And their entertainment company is actually called Fans First Entertainment. And it worked out. I was a fan first. And now he made me a bigger fan because he actually followed through with what they say. His actions spoke louder than his words. So he set it up, and literally I went down there with my cameras, the microphone at 2:00 on whatever day that was. It was COVID, I think, was like in full swing at that time. We set up in the stadium outside, and we did it. And it was like almost an hour conversation, interview. And I was just like ecstatic that like it happened. And as a matter of fact, he had said, he said, I've done hundreds of these podcasts. And he said, you were actually the first person that came here to do the podcast. And I was like, wow. And to think that like now it's not a podcast, but for their show, like ESPN has been there, like the local news. I mean, they're on ESPN Plus. They got a show now. And it's just like, wow, like to me, that's amazing. And the thing is, that's where, once again, when you hit a wall, when you have an issue where you're just like, you don't think you're able to accomplish something, you don't know, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this. You have to go back into that cookie jar, into your past and say, look, these are the things that I've accomplished in the past. If I could do that back then, why can't I do it now? I mean, I did it then. I picked up the phone. I sent him a message. He said, yes, let's do it. And within a couple weeks, I was there in the stadium doing the podcast. Done. And guess what? Those small steps, continuing to do that consistency, it's going to build that consistency muscle for you to continue doing that. Because there's times that, there's a slump. I get into this slump. I'm like, I don't know, doubting myself. I got to make sure it's perfect. No. Listen, that's what I love so much about, I do the black and white, at least for myself. Because in a way, it's like I'm telling stories about the past. And the black and white is representative of the past. It's also real, raw. It's just, this is what you get. Black and white, no colors, no fancy filters or anything. It's just black and white. Hopefully relatable. Stories that you can relate to. Or to inspire you. But I don't have a bookshelf behind me with a bunch of books. I'm not trying to, show, hey, look, I'm well read. Which I'm not knocking anybody for doing that. And I have, a bunch of books on a bookshelf. I've given a bunch of books away or donated them because I read them. I'll say, okay, I had the information. I got the information from the books. But you know what? Experience, it's one of the best teachers. It's also the one that's going to sting the most. It's going to hurt the most, but you're going to remember it. I mean, you can read things from a book, but like they say, sometimes you got to touch the stove that's hot to figure out that it's really hot. You got to touch the paint. I mean, how many people have been told, hey, the paint's wet, or there's a sign that says wet paint. And the person thinks, well, I mean, did they put it up 2 days ago? Was it 2 hours ago? And let me touch the paint. Is it wet? No, it's not wet. See, they lied. And how many other things they're going to question it? You just got to experience it. Sometimes you have to experience it, and sometimes it's going to hurt. Sometimes you're going to suffer, and that's okay. It's just one small story in your whole book of stories. Now, I'm just going to kind of finish out the podcast, that story. I was fearful that I wasn't going to get him as a guest, that I couldn't find a guest, and I ended up sending the message off. He said yes. And hey, not all of them went that easy. Sometimes it was back and forth, trying to figure out the right time, the right place, got canceled, had to reschedule it. And hey, it's going to happen like that. And for a first guest, it worked out pretty damn good. Right? So I would just say, continue pushing forward. Do not let the perfection stop you, because you're not going to be perfect. Don't expect to be perfect. Expect to fail. And if you don't fail that bad, well, then I guess it's pretty good. Right? I want you to imagine if a camera crew had followed you around doing a documentary about your life. That's just one way to kind of remind yourself, hey, am what I'm doing today, is it worthy of my dreams? Is it worthy of showing people in the future what you did? If somebody was following you around, documenting everything that you did, not saying that everything that you do is going to be great. It's not following you around to be in a reality show and you have to make things up. We're not talking about making things up to make it lively. Or, hey, are people going to watch? Because if I'm not doing something funny or fabulous, that they're not going to watch. No, it's just, if people were watching you, what you did, and that could even go down to your habits, the things that you're doing, Would you be okay with that? And would people find it interesting or say, hey, look, they're utilizing their time to the best of their ability and they're utilizing it in the best way to benefit them, their children, their family, and future generations of their family? I would just ask that. Just ask yourself that from time to time. And then lastly, I like to finish it up with a fact of the day. And this is really funny or interesting, I would say, because sometimes unlikely things can come out of things that you do. And what I'm trying to say is, so in 2010, Legos, yes, Legos, the little Lego blocks, the Lego company, in 2010, Legos produced 380 million tires. Yes, tires, little Lego tires. Not the car tires, but little Lego tires for the little Lego cars. In 2010, they produced 380 million tires, and it made them the largest tire manufacturer in history in that year. And I think they might still hold that record too, 380 million tires. Yeah, they're not the big car tires, but still, it's a tire. And it's a car tire for a Lego tire. It's a rubber tire. It's literally a rubber tire. 380 million. I thought that was pretty interesting fact. If you're looking to be a guest, if you know somebody that would make a very interesting guest, I got a lineup of people, and I'm trying to get it all coordinated and set up to bring the people on here. I'm gonna do Zoom calls or Riverside. I think it's Riverside FM that I'm going to be using. But if you can get somebody, they don't have to be in the Savannah, Georgia area. Maybe they're, in California. Maybe they're on the other side of the world. Hey, Australia. Maybe they're in France. Maybe they're in Turkey, China, Brazil. It doesn't matter. If you have an interesting guest, I'd love to have them come on, have them tell their story, inspire, motivate, just entertain, tell a great story. Info@motivatemultimedia.com. Motivatemultimedia.com is the website. Instagram, Facebook, Motivate Multimedia on there. You could also just probably search The Journey, but Motivate Multimedia on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn. You can search for me on there, Motivate Multimedia, and send me a message, drop me a line, info@motivatemultimedia.com. And until next time, let's continue just telling one story at a time.